Stone Creek Ranch, Wyoming, autumn 1905. The old man stood before two graves under the oak tree, his weathered hands resting on a walking stick carved from pine. Nathaniel Cross was 63 years old, and his right leg still ached where the bullet had torn through muscle 27 years ago. The wind carried the scent of sage and memories. Behind him, footsteps crunched on fallen leaves. His grandson, Daniel Jr., 16 years old and gangly with youth, approached with the hesitant respect boys show to old men who've lived through violence. "Grandpa," the boy said, "Mama says you knew Grandma Eleanor before she was Grandma, that she came here different than most wives." Nathaniel smiled, though his eyes stayed on the graves. Catherine Cross, 1847 to 1871. Daniel Cross, March 3rd to March 6th, 1871. And beside them, freshly carved, Eleanor Cross, 1843 to 1903. 27 years of marriage. Gone 2 years now, and the silence still felt wrong. "Different," Nathaniel repeated. "That's one way to put it, boy." He turned, the stick taking his weight. "Walk with me. I'll tell you about the day I bought your grandmother at auction." Daniel Jr.'s eyes went wide. "You what?" "July 15th, 1878. That was the day everything changed." Nathaniel started down the hill, his voice settling into the rhythm of remembering. "I was 36 years old. 7 years a widower. 7 years alone in that big house, and I was dying inside, son. Dying slow, the way a fire dies when you stop feeding it wood." The ranch house came into view below them, expanded now with additions built by 3 generations. Smoke rose from the chimney, cattle dotted the fields. Everything he'd built, everything that mattered, started with one choice on one hot July day. "Let me tell you how it happened." Tahir, Laramie, Wyoming, July 15th, 1878. The town square baked under a merciless sun. Nathaniel Cross had come for supplies, 20 pounds of nails, 2 new axe handles, salt pork if the price was fair. Instead, he found a crowd gathered around the raised platform where they usually sold horses and cattle. Today they were selling a family. He stopped at the edge of the crowd, a tall man in his mid-30s wearing a brown hat and dusty work clothes. His right leg dragged slightly, legacy of a Confederate minia-ball at Shiloh. The scar that ran from his eyebrow to his cheekbone was paler than his sun-dark skin, a reminder of a different fight, a different war, years later when he'd helped the wrong man and made the right enemies. On the platform stood a woman and 5 children. Nathaniel's trained eye assessed them the way he'd assess livestock, though the thought made him sick. The woman was 35, maybe younger but worn by hardship, thin but not starved. Her spine was straight despite everything. That caught his attention first, the refusal to bow. Her dress was patched but clean. Her hands, visible where she held the youngest child, were work roughened. She knew labor. Good. 5 children clustered around her like quail chicks sensing a hawk. The oldest was a boy, 13 or 14, trying to stand tall despite the fear in his eyes. He had his mother's chewed jaw set hard against the world. The way he positioned himself, half in front of his siblings, spoke of training. Someone had taught him to protect. A girl of 10 clutched a journal to her chest like a shield. Another boy, maybe 7, stared not at the crowd but at Nathaniel himself, eyes calculating. 2 younger girls completed the set, one about 5, crying into her mother's skirt, and a baby on the woman's hip, maybe 18 months old, too young to understand. "Folks, you know why we're here." Chester Boone, the auctioneer, wiped his neck with a rag. His voice carried the practiced cadence of a man who sold things for a living. "Widow Eleanor Hayes, 5 children. Legal debt of $500 owed to Mordecai Hayes, brother of the deceased Harrison Hayes. The law's clear on this." "The law says nothing about selling people," someone shouted from the back. Chester ignored it. "Do I hear $10? $10? Nathaniel's jaw tightened. That's what they valued a family. Less than a decent horse. $10, a voice called. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Not kind laughter. Nathaniel studied the woman's face. She didn't flinch, didn't look down. She lifted her chin and scanned the crowd with the bearing of someone who'd known better days. Philadelphia educated, he'd bet money on it. The way she held herself, the set of her shoulders, spoke of refinement lost to circumstance. He knew that look. He'd seen it in the mirror after Catherine died. "Come now," Chester said. educated woman. Can read, write, cipher numbers. Then she's overqualified for washing floors. A woman's voice sharp with meanness. Martha Penrose. Nathaniel recognized her without looking. Last winter, her daughter had nearly died of fever. Who'd sat up 3 nights using every remedy her dead father had taught her. Eleanor Hayes, that's who. This was her thanks. The oldest boy's fists clenched. The woman put her free hand on his shoulder. Squeezed once. A message. Don't. Smart, Nathaniel thought, teaching the boy to pick his battles. $20. Samuel Wright, the boarding house owner. He needed kitchen help. Nathaniel knew what that meant. 18-hour days, children working too. The boy would be hauling water by dawn, and the girl would scrub floors until her knees bled. Chester perked up. Now we're moving. Do I hear 25? Silence. The entertainment was wearing thin. Mordecai Hayes pushed forward from the side, 45 years old, belly straining his Sunday coat. His face was already red with heat and anger. This is taking too long, Chester. Patience, Mordecai. Patience pays. $30. A new voice. Female. Constance Hayes, Mordecai's wife, thin as wire in her dark dress. She stepped forward, hands twisting together. $30 for the baby. The woman on the platform, Eleanor, her arms tightened around the youngest child. No. Constance moved closer, voice breaking with something raw. Be reasonable. You can't feed 5. Give me the baby. I'll raise her right. Good home. Full and she'll have everything. She has a home. You call this a home? Constance's voice cracked. Real pain flickered across her face, deep and desperate. 20 years married. No children. Everyone knew. No one mentioned it. I can give her things you never could. Please. For half a second, Nathaniel almost pitied her. Then Constance reached for the baby. The oldest boy moved fast, stepping between them. Don't touch her. Boy. Mordecai's voice carried a threat. I said don't. The kid's voice didn't waver. 13 years old, and he had the eyes of a soldier. Nathaniel recognized that look too. He'd seen it on young men at Shiloh, right before they charged into cannon fire. The crowd murmured. Chester banged his gavel. Order! We'll have order! Mordecai's face went purple. The boy's got spirit. Maybe I should bid on him separate. Could use someone at the store. The boy's fists clenched tighter. Eleanor grabbed his shoulder hard. No. But her eyes, when she looked at Mordecai, held something Nathaniel hadn't seen yet. Pure hatred. We stay together or not at all. That's not your choice anymore, Mordecai said. $40 for the lot. Final offer. Chester raised his gavel. Any advance on 40? Going once, freeze. Nathaniel looked at the family, really looked, at the way the children huddled together, at the woman's spine still straight despite everything, at the oldest boy trying so hard to be a man, at the journal-clutching girl who was writing all this down, bearing witness to her own sale, at the baby who reached for her mother's face with tiny hands and said, Mama, like it was the only word that mattered. And Nathaniel saw Daniel, his son, his boy who'd lived 3 days and died in his arms, lungs too weak to draw breath, while Nathaniel whispered promises he couldn't keep. This boy on the platform was 13. Daniel would have been 13. Something in Nathaniel's chest, something that had been frozen for 7 years, cracked. $100. The words came out low, rough as creek gravel, but they carried. The square went quiet. Even the dog stopped barking. Heads turned, the crowd parted. Nathaniel walked forward, his bad legs stiff but steady, until he stood at the base of the platform. Chester recovered first. Mr. Cross, that's generous, but wasn't being generous. Nathaniel pulled a leather pouch from his coat, set it on the platform edge. Coins clinked. Real money. $100, mate. Mordecai shoved forward. This is family, agent. Nathaniel's gaze shifted, his gray eyes, cold as January, fixed on Mordecai. Family don't sell family. I'm settling a legal debt. Debts between men. Nathaniel's voice didn't rise. Didn't need to. Not women, not children. The pouch sat there, heavy with promise. Chester licked his lips, looked at the money, looked at Mordecai. Profit 1. Always did. 100 is the bid, Chester said. Any advance? Silence stretched like wire pulled taut. Going once, Nathaniel didn't look at Eleanor, couldn't. If he saw fear or hope or anything human in her face, he might change his mind. And he'd already decided. The moment he saw that boy trying to protect his family, he'd decided. Going twice, the gavel came down. Sold to Mr. Nathaniel Cross. The sound echoed. Final. Binding. Nathaniel had just bought 6 human beings for $100. More than twice the actual debt, if the debt even existed. More than a year's wages for a working man. More than he'd spent on anything since Catherine's headstone. He climbed the steps slow, his right leg protesting. Up close, the woman was smaller than she'd seemed from below. The oldest boy was tall for his age, would be taller than Nathaniel in a few years. The journal girl had ink stains on her fingers. The younger children smelled like fear and unwashed bodies. The baby stared at him with enormous eyes, then grabbed his beard with both tiny fists. Something flickered in Nathaniel's chest. Memory. Pain. Daniel had done that once, the second day of his short life. Ma'am? Nathaniel touched his hat brim to Eleanor. Respectful distance. My wagon's out front, if you and the children would come with me. Eleanor's voice stuck in her throat. She nodded. Mordecai grabbed Nathaniel's arm. This ain't over. Nathaniel looked down at Mordecai's hand on his sleeve. Said nothing, just looked. His face showed nothing but his eyes promised violence. Mordecai let go. You want your money? Nathaniel's voice dropped lower. Come to Stone Creek tomorrow. I'll pay you. He paused. Then you'll leave these folks alone. Permanent. Something in his tone made Mordecai step back. Constance pushed forward, reaching for the baby. At least let me. Eleanor turned, shielding the child. No. Constance's face crumpled. Real pain, not performance. Her hands dropped. I just wanted. I can't. She didn't finish. Turned away, shoulders shaking. Nathaniel descended the steps, turned, held up his arms. Children first. The oldest boy stiffened. I can manage myself. Didn't say you couldn't. The phrase hung there. Not a challenge, just fact. The boy hesitated, then jumped down, landing hard, stumbling. Nathaniel's hands shot out, steadying him. The boy jerked away but mumbled, thanks. Nathaniel nodded. The journal girl climbed down, careful, journal tucked tight. The younger boy followed. Then the 5-year-old, still crying. Eleanor stood alone with the baby. The crowd was dispersing. The show was over. Whispers started, would spread. By sundown, every house in Laramie would know the widow Hayes had been bought by crazy Nathaniel Cross. Nathaniel raised his arms again. I'll take the little one. Help you down. I can. Didn't say you couldn't. There it was again. That phrase. Eleanor studied his face, looking for meanness, for ownership, for the thing men did when they had power. Found nothing. Just patience. She handed the baby down. His hands were massive, scarred knuckles, thick fingers, but gentle. The baby stared at him, then grabbed his beard again with both fists. Something flickered in Nathaniel's eyes, gone before Eleanor could name it. She descended. Her shoes, resoled 3 times, scraped over wood. She stood before the man who'd just bought her family. Thank you, she managed. Wasn't kindness. He handed the baby back. Their fingers brushed. His hands were rough as tree bark, warm, steady. Wasn't right what they did. The wagon waited at the square's edge. Sturdy flatbed, high sides. 2 horses, 1 gray, 1 brown with white socks. They looked well fed, well cared for. Ulysses and Grant, Nathaniel said, gesturing to the horses. Named for the general. You fought? Eleanor asked. Yes, ma'am. He helped the children into the wagon bed. Blankets were laid out, cleaner than anything Eleanor owned. The oldest boy took the corner, gathering his siblings close. The journal girl opened her book, hands shaking. The younger boy stared at the horses. The 5-year-old finally stopped crying. Nathaniel gestured to the wagon seat. You can ride up here or back with them. I'll ride up. He helped her up, hand under her elbow, steadying, not grasping. Climbed up beside her, the seat brought them close. Close enough to smell wood smoke, leather, something clean like pine. Nathaniel took the reins, flicked them once. The horses moved. Laramie fell behind. The church where Reverend Michaels had said family troubles weren't his concern. The mercantile where Mordecai counted money while children starved. The boarding house where Samuel Wright worked girls till they dropped. Good riddance. Mr. Cross, Eleanor said. Nathaniel. Nathaniel. Strange in her mouth. A day ago he'd been a stranger. Now he owned them. What do you want from us? He didn't answer right away. The wagon creaked. Wheels found ruts, settled into rhythm. The sound was almost peaceful. Got a ranch, he said finally. Stone Creek, 8 miles west. Place needs work, fences down, fields need planting, cabin needs... He paused. Everything, really. He kept his eyes forward. Could use help if you're willing. If I'm not, then you're not. He kept his eyes forward, but his jaw worked. You're welcome either way. Eleanor studied his profile. Strong jaw, the scar pale against sun-darkened skin, lines around his eyes that spoke of pain carried long. Hands on the reins, scarred and capable. Why'd you do it? She asked. You don't know us. Knew enough. That's not an answer. No, ma'am, it's not. He was quiet for a moment, then. Had a family once, wife Catherine, son Daniel. Boy was about your oldest's age when consumption took them. His voice stayed flat. 7 years back. Eleanor's throat closed. I'm sorry. Appreciate it. He flicked the reins. Sorry doesn't fix things, but I appreciate it. They rode in silence. The land opened up. Rolling hills, sage and prairie grass, mountains purple in the distance. Sky so big it hurt to look at. This was the West Harrison had promised her. The West he'd died trying to tame. Mr. Cross, sir? The oldest boy's voice from the back. Nathaniel's fine. What kind of ranch is it? Cattle mostly, some horses, chickens. Got a milk cow named Betsy. She's got opinions about everything. The younger boy giggled. First sound of joy Eleanor had heard from him in months. You know cattle? Nathaniel asked. No, sir, but I learned fast. Reckon you do. Nathaniel didn't turn around. What's your name? Thomas? Thomas. Good strong name. Nathaniel shifted in the reins. You ever shot a gun, Thomas? No, sir. We'll fix that. Man needs to know how to protect his family. Eleanor's breath caught. His family. Not Nathaniel's. Thomas's own. The journal girl leaned forward. Do you have books? Got a Bible. Few others. Not much for reading these days. I like to read, she said quietly, and write. Then maybe you can read to me sometime, Nathaniel said. Eyes ain't what they used to be. Eleanor knew it was a lie, a kindness dressed as need. Her eyes burned. There, Nathaniel pointed. Eleanor looked up. A cabin sat against a hillside. The creek glittered beside it, catching light. Barn to the left, solid and square. Fences traced green pasture. Cattle grazed, black and white against the grass. Mountains rose behind it all, purple and eternal. Not grand, not fine, but real. It's not much, Nathaniel said. It's enough, Eleanor whispered. The wagon rolled into the yard. A dog appeared. Shepherd mixed with a gray muzzle barked once. Nathaniel whistled low. The dog sat. That's Blue. He's friendly. The children climbed down. Thomas helped the younger ones, face tight with responsibility. The journal girl clutched her book. The boy approached Blue, hand out. The 5-year-old held Eleanor's skirt. The baby stared at everything. Nathaniel descended, offered his hand. Eleanor took it. His grip was firm, warm. For a moment they stood close enough that she saw the exact shade of gray in his eyes. Flint gray, storm gray, the gray of a sky before rain. Welcome to Stone Creek, he said. The cabin door opened. A woman stood there, native Arapaho Eleanor guessed, maybe 50, wearing a simple dress, hair in a long braid. Her face was lined with years, but her eyes were sharp, amused. About time, the woman said. Supper's been ready an hour. Nathaniel's mouth twitched. Might have been a smile. Eleanor Hayes, this is Ruth Whitewing. Helps around the place. Best cook in 3 territories. Ruth snorted. Flattery gets you extra biscuits. Her eyes softened on the children. Lord Nathaniel, you brought the whole town. They ain't the town, Nathaniel said quietly. They're family now. Ruth's gaze shifted to Eleanor, assessed her, then nodded. Well, come on. Food's getting cold, and these babies look half-starved. The children looked to Eleanor. She nodded. Thomas led them inside. Eleanor moved to follow. Nathaniel's voice stopped her. Mrs. Hayes? She turned. You're safe here, he said. Whatever happens next, whatever you decide, you're safe. All of you. Eleanor had heard promises before. Harrison had promised to come home from the mines. Mordecai had promised to help after Harrison died. Reverend Michaels had promised God provided. All lies. But something in Nathaniel's voice, the plain, unvarnished truth of it, made her want to believe. Thank you, she whispered. Wasn't kindness, he said again. Then he limped toward the barn, leaving Eleanor in the yard as sunset lit the mountains on fire. Inside, warmth hit her like a wave. A hearth dominated one wall, fire crackling. A table in the center, scarred but solid. Stairs led to a loft, shelves lined with jars, beans, corn, preserves. The air smelled like wood smoke and cornbread in safety. The children stood frozen, uncertain. Ruth ladled stew into bowls. Sit, all of you. They sat. Eleanor took the end chair. Her children crowded the table. Too many for the space, but no one complained. Ruth set bowls in front of them. Eat. Thomas picked up his spoon, stopped, looked at Eleanor. Go ahead, she mouthed. He ate. They all did. Ravenous. Eleanor watched them shovel stew, tear bread, drink water like it was the first they'd had in weeks. It nearly was. Ruth set a bowl in front of Eleanor. You too. Eleanor picked up the spoon, tasted. Salt, pepper, beef that melted on her tongue. Potatoes soft as butter. Carrots sweet as spring. Something broke in her chest. Not grief, not shame. Relief. She bowed her head. Tears came hot and fast, silent. Her shoulders shook. Mama, the journal girl's voice, small and scared. Eleanor looked up, wiped her eyes. I'm fine, baby. I'm fine. You're crying. Sometimes people cry when they're happy, Ruth said quietly. Your mama's had a hard day. Let her be. The children ate. Eleanor tried, managed a few bites. Her stomach had forgotten how to handle real food. When they finished, Ruth pointed to the loft. You children sleep up there. Quilts are clean. Chamber pot in the corner. Boys use the outhouse, but not after dark. Too many critters. Thomas stood. What about Mama? Your mama gets the bed. Ruth gestured to a small room off the main floor. Mr. Cross sleeps out here. Where? Thomas looked around. Chair by the fire. Same as always. Eleanor's throat tightened. I can't take his bed. Ain't about can or can't, Ruth said. It's what's happening. Now get those little ones upstairs before they fall asleep in their bowls. Eleanor herded them up. The loft was small but clean. 2 quilts spread on the floor, thick and warm. She tucked them in, Thomas protesting he was too old. The journal girl already half asleep. The younger boy yawning. The 5-year-old clutching her hand. Mama, the 5-year-old whispered. Are we staying? I think so, baby. Is the man nice? Eleanor thought of Nathaniel's hands, gentle with the baby. His voice stating facts without judgment. His limp, his scar, his gray eyes that held grief like stones. Yes, she said. I think he is. Good. The 5-year-old's eyes closed. Eleanor kissed each forehead, descended the stairs. Ruth was cleaning. Eleanor moved to help. No, Ruth said, you sit. You should sit. Eleanor sat. Ruth worked in silence, efficient. The door opened. Nathaniel entered, smelling of horses and hay. He looked at Eleanor, at Ruth. They settled? Asleep already, Ruth said. Worn clean through. Nathaniel nodded, poured himself coffee from the pot on the hearth, stood drinking it, back to them. Ruth dried her hands. I'm heading home. See you tomorrow. Ruth, Eleanor started. Don't thank me yet, Ruth said. You haven't tasted my breakfast. She smiled, brief and warm. Then she was gone. Eleanor sat alone with the man who'd bought her. Nathaniel finished his coffee, set the cup down. You can have the bed long as you need it. Where will you sleep? Here's fine. He gestured to the chair by the fire. Slept worse places. The war? The war, after the war, before the war, come to think of it. He pulled off his hat, set it on the table. His hair was dark, silver at the temples. You need anything, I'll be right here. Mr. Cross, Nathaniel. Nathaniel. She stood, faced him. What do you want from me? He met her eyes, didn't flinch, didn't look away. Want you to sleep without fear. Want those children to eat regular. Want to hear laughter in this house again? He paused. Beyond that, nothing. Nothing? Nothing you ain't willing to give. The words hung in the air between them. Eleanor's hands twisted in her skirt. I don't understand. You don't need to, Nathaniel said. Not tonight. Tonight you just need to rest. He turned to the chair, lowered himself into it. His legs stuck out stiff. He closed his eyes. Dismissed. Not cruel, just done. Eleanor retreated to the small room. The bed was narrow, the mattress thin but clean. The quilts smelled like sage. She lay down, stared at the ceiling beams, listened to her children breathe in the loft above, listened to the fire crackle, listened to Nathaniel's breathing, slow and steady in the chair. 7 years, he'd said. 7 years alone in this cabin, now filled with strangers. Eleanor closed her eyes. Tomorrow would bring questions. Tomorrow would bring Mordecai demanding payment. Tomorrow would bring reality. But tonight she was safe. Her children were safe. That was enough. In the main room, Nathaniel sat with eyes closed, but he wasn't sleeping. Couldn't sleep. Not with the house full of breathing, living souls. 7 years of silence, shattered. His chest didn't ache like it used to. That was something. Outside, coyotes called in the distance. The creek murmured. Stars wheeled overhead, cold and bright. Inside, a family slept. And Nathaniel Cross, who'd thought his life was over at 29 when they buried Catherine and Daniel, felt something he'd forgotten. Not hope, not yet, but the possibility of it. That was enough for now. Stone Creek Ranch, day 2. Dawn came cold and blue through the window. Eleanor woke to voices, low and male, unfamiliar. Her heart jumped. She sat up fast, disoriented, then remembered. Stone Creek. Nathaniel, safety maybe. She smoothed her dress, still wrinkled from yesterday, the only dress she owned now. Everything else had been left behind or lost. She stepped into the main room, bare feet cold on the wooden floor. Nathaniel stood at the table with another man, younger, lean, with dark hair past his collar and darker eyes that missed nothing. A gun rode his hip, worn holster positioned for speed. When they turned, the stranger assessed Eleanor in a single glance. Professional, not leering, then looked away, giving her the respect of not staring. Mrs. Hayes, Nathaniel said. His voice was rougher than yesterday, like he hadn't slept. This is Ezra Cole. Works the ranch with me. Ezra touched his hat brim. Ma'am. His voice carried the neutral tone of someone who'd learned to speak carefully around white folks, even friendly ones. Mr. Cole. Just Ezra's fine. He looked back at Nathaniel, and Eleanor saw something pass between them. Years of working together. Trust built through shared hardship. Ruth said you bought a whole family. Didn't believe her till now. Believe her, Nathaniel said simply. No explanation, no justification. Ezra's face went serious. The easy moment passed. Mordecai's going to be trouble. Let him try. Eleanor's stomach tightened. The acid taste of fear rose in her throat. He's coming today? Said he would. Nathaniel poured coffee from the pot on the stove, handed her a cup. The tin was warm in her hands. The gesture was automatic, domestic, the kind of thing a husband did for a wife. But Nathaniel wasn't her husband. He was the man who owned her. The distinction mattered, even if it didn't feel like it in this moment. Ezra's here in case Mordecai brings friends. You think he will? Man like that always brings friends. Nathaniel's voice stayed level, matter of fact, the way he might discuss the weather or cattle prices. No drama, just reality. Don't worry about it. Don't worry, as if worry was optional, as if she could simply decide not to feel the cold knot in her stomach, the tight band around her chest. Footsteps on the stairs, loud in the quiet morning. Thomas descended, followed by Margaret. Both stopped when they saw Ezra. Thomas's hand moved instinctively toward Margaret. Protective. The boy was always protecting, always on guard. Too young for that kind of burden, but carrying it anyway. Morning, Ezra said, his voice gentle slightly for the children. Thomas nodded, wary. Margaret clutched her journal like armor, like if she held it tight enough, it might shield her from whatever came next. "You're the oldest?" Ezra asked Thomas. "Yes, sir." "How old?" 13. Thomas stood straighter, trying to add inches, trying to look older, more capable. Eleanor recognized the posture. Harrison had stood that way before he went into the mines that last time. "Old enough to work, then?" Ezra looked at Nathaniel, some unspoken communication passing between them. "Could use help moving that downed fence in the north pasture." Thomas straightened more, shoulders back. "I can do that." "Didn't ask if you could," Ezra said. His tone wasn't sharp, just precise. "Asked if you would." There it was again. That phrasing Eleanor had noticed yesterday. Nathaniel and Ezra both did it, stated things without assuming, asked for consent even when they had the power to command, respected choice even when choice seemed like a luxury none of them could afford. "I'll do it," Thomas said. His voice cracked slightly on the last word, still about pretending to be a man. "Good," Ezra nodded once. "Eat first. Can't work on empty." Ruth arrived with the sunrise as if she'd been summoned by some internal clock that knew exactly when she was needed. She carried a basket of eggs, fresh from the hen house, still warm. She took one look at the crowded cabin, at the children emerging from the loft, rubbing sleep from their eyes, at Eleanor trying to manage Clara, who'd woken fussy and demanding, and laughed. The sound was warm, genuine, the first real laughter Eleanor had heard in longer than she could remember. "Lord have mercy," Ruth said. "It's like a schoolhouse in here." When she took over the kitchen with the easy confidence of someone who knew exactly where everything was, who'd cooked in this space so many times the movements were automatic. She cooked, eggs scrambled with butter, bacon thick cut and sizzling, biscuits that smelled like heaven itself had taken up residence in the oven. The children ate like wolves again, shoveling food into their mouths with the desperation of people who'd gone too long not knowing where the next meal would come from. Eleanor managed half a biscuit. Her stomach was still uncertain, still adjusting to having food again. Too much too fast made her nauseous. She sipped coffee instead, letting the bitter heat settle her nerves. Benjamin, the 7-year-old with endless energy and no sense of danger, watched Ezra with wide eyes. "You got a gun?" "I do." Ezra's hand rested near it, casual but ready. "You ever shoot anybody?" "Benjamin!" Eleanor's voice came sharp, mortified. Her children knew better. She'd raised them better than this. "It's all right, ma'am." Ezra looked at Benjamin with something like understanding. The boy needed to know these things. Out here, ignorance killed faster than bullets. "Only when I had to, and I didn't like it." "Oh." Benjamin considered this, chewing slowly, processing. "Did they die?" "Benjamin, that's enough," Eleanor said. But Ezra answered anyway. "Some did, some didn't. Either way, it stays with you." He looked at Benjamin directly. "Killing ain't something to be curious about, boy. It's something to avoid if you can." Maggie stayed glued to Eleanor's side, silent as stone. The 5-year-old hadn't spoken more than 10 words since Harrison died. Just clung and watched and absorbed everything with those two old eyes. Margaret ate mechanically, eyes on her journal even while she chewed. Eleanor wondered what the girl was writing. What words could possibly capture what they were living through? Clara, blessedly oblivious at 18 months old, banged a spoon on the table with the pure joy of making noise. Ruth gently took it away before the racket drove everyone mad. After breakfast, Nathaniel stood. The chair scraped against the floor. Everyone looked up, attuned to his movements, waiting for direction. "Thomas, you're with Ezra. Margaret." He looked at the journalers with something like respect. "Ruth could use help gathering eggs. Benjamin, you can feed the chickens." He turned to Eleanor. His gray eyes met hers. "You can rest or help Ruth, your choice." Always choice. Always that careful preservation of her agency, even when they both knew he could order her to do anything. "I'll help." "Didn't think you'd rest," Nathaniel said. Was that approval in his voice? Hard to tell with him. He kept everything locked down tight, every emotion carefully controlled. The morning passed in motion. Eleanor followed Ruth to the chicken coop. Maggie attached to her skirt like a burr. Clara balanced on her hip, growing heavier by the minute. Margaret scattered feed with quiet efficiency, watching the chickens with the careful attention she gave everything. Benjamin chased them until Ruth told him to stop. They won't lay if you stress them, Ruth said, her voice carrying the patience of someone who'd explained this 100 times to 100 different children. How do you stress a chicken? Benjamin asked, genuinely curious. The boy wanted to understand everything, know everything, control everything. Eleanor recognized the impulse. It was how he dealt with fear. Keep chasing them, and you'll find out. Eleanor gathered eggs, careful. Her hands remembered this from childhood, before Philadelphia, before her father taught her medicine, before she became someone who didn't gather eggs anymore. The chickens clucked and shifted, their feathers soft when she brushed against them, reaching into the nesting boxes. The eggs were warm, smooth, perfect. There was something meditative about this work. Simple, honest. Her hands knew what to do even if her mind was elsewhere. You've done this before, Ruth observed. Nothing escaped the woman's notice. On my grandfather's farm, long time ago. The memory was faint, worn soft at the edges. She'd been young, her mother was still alive, before everything got complicated. You ain't from around here. Pennsylvania, Philadelphia. The words felt like another life, another woman. Eleanor Hayes of Philadelphia was dead. This version, the one gathering eggs in Wyoming, was someone different, someone harder, someone who might survive. Ruth's eyebrows rose. That's a long way from Wyoming. My husband, Harrison, wanted west, said there was opportunity. Eleanor's voice went flat, the way it always did when she talked about him. Not because she didn't love him, because love and anger could exist in the same space, and she was angry he'd left her alone with 5 children and $50 in debt that somehow became $500. Was he right? He's dead, so no. Eleanor set an egg in the basket harder than necessary. It cracked, yolk leaking through the shell. She stared at it, at the waste, and felt tears prick her eyes. Stupid. It was just an egg, but everything felt like too much right now. Everyone's sorry. Sorry doesn't fix things. No, Ruth agreed. Her voice held the weight of someone who knew about things that couldn't be fixed. But it's better than nothing. They worked in silence. The sun climbed higher. The air warmed. Wyoming in July was relentless, heat beating down without mercy. Eleanor's dress clung to her back with sweat. Her arms ached from carrying Clara. But the work felt good, purposeful. Then Ruth said, Nathaniel's a good man. I don't know him. You will. Ruth's voice carried certainty, the kind that came from years of knowing someone. He's the kind that shows through action, not words. What happened to his family? Eleanor asked. Though she already knew part of it, she wanted to hear it from Ruth, wanted to understand the man who'd bought her. He told you about Catherine and Daniel? Some. Nathaniel had been brief, economical with his pain. Ruth's voice went distant, remembering. Winter of 1871, Catherine was 8 months pregnant, caught a cough that wouldn't quit. Started small, just a tickle. Then it got worse. Couldn't breathe right. Baby came early because of the strain. Boy, Daniel, beautiful child, dark hair like his daddy, but his lungs. She paused. They weren't ready. Wasn't developed enough. He fought for 3 days. I've never seen a baby fight so hard, but in the end, his body just couldn't do it. Eleanor's chest constricted. She thought of Clara, of holding her after she was born, that moment of relief when the baby cried and you knew the lungs worked. Catherine lasted a week after, Ruth continued. The birth broke something inside her. Too much bleeding. Infection, maybe. Or maybe she just didn't want to live without her boy. Sometimes grief kills as sure as any disease. Ruth's eyes were distant. Nathaniel buried them on the hill behind the barn, under the oak tree, goes up there every Sunday, rain or shine, talks to them like they can hear. God, Eleanor whispered. Nathaniel ain't bought anyone at auction before, Ruth said, looking at Eleanor directly now. Ain't brought anyone here. You and your children. You're the first living souls in this house since Catherine died. 7 years of silence. 7 years of that man slowly dying inside. Then he saw you on that platform and something changed. Why us? The question came out smaller than Eleanor intended. You'd have to ask him. Ruth smiled slightly, knowing. Good luck getting a straight answer. A shout from the yard interrupted them. Male voices, raised and angry. Eleanor's blood went cold. She knew that voice. Mordecai. She ran toward the house. Children behind her. Maggie cried out, stumbling. Eleanor scooped her up without stopping, Clara on one hip, Maggie on the other. Her back screamed protest. She rounded the corner and stopped dead. 3 men on horses. The horses were good stock, well-fed, expensive. Not working animals. Show horses. Mordecai in the center, face already red with rage or heat or both. His belly strained against his Sunday vest, buttons threatening to pop. On his right, a younger man, his son Jacob, maybe 19. The boy looked uncomfortable, like he'd rather be anywhere else. On his left, someone Eleanor didn't recognize. Big, mean-looking, with the flat eyes of a man who hurt people for money. Nathaniel stood in the yard, thumbs hooked in his belt. Casual. But Eleanor noticed his weight was balanced, ready to move. His gun was within easy reach. Ezra leaned against the barn, apparently relaxed, but his hand was near his gun. Thomas stood behind Nathaniel, fists clenched, vibrating with the need to do something. Anything. There she is, Mordecai said, pointing at Eleanor like she was livestock. My brother's widow. Bought and paid for. Bought and paid for by me, Nathaniel said. His voice was level, conversational almost. You got a problem with that, take it up with Chester Boone. I got a problem with you thinking $100 settles this. Mordecai's horse shifted, sensing his rider's agitation. The animal's ears were back, tail swishing. It's twice the debt. There's interest. Mordecai ticked items off on his fat fingers. Damages, emotional distress, the hardship of having to deal with all this. Ezra laughed short and sharp. Emotional distress, that's rich. Mordecai's face darkened, his small eyes fixed on Ezra. You stay out of this, breed. The word hung in the air like poison. The temperature dropped 10 degrees. Ezra's expression didn't change, but something cold entered his eyes, something dangerous. Eleanor had seen that look before, on men who'd been pushed too far, too often. Men who'd learned to swallow rage until it fermented into something deadly. Careful with that word, Ezra said. His voice was soft, softer than before. That was worse, somehow. Or what? Mordecai leaned forward in his saddle, smirking. He thought he had the upper hand. Numbers, the law, social order. He was wrong. Or I'll forget my manners. The big man on Mordecai's left shifted in his saddle, leather creaking. His hand drifted toward his gun. You threatening Mr. Hayes? Stating facts, Ezra said. He hadn't moved. Hadn't needed to. Nathaniel held up a hand. The gesture was small, but everyone stopped. That was power, Eleanor realized. Real power wasn't loud. It was the ability to stop a situation with a single motion. Mordecai, you want money? Fine. He pulled the leather pouch from his coat. It clinked heavily. Real coins, not scrip. Here's 100. Take it and go. Not enough. Mordecai's smile was oily, self-satisfied. He thought he was winning. I want 200. Plus the woman does laundry for the store twice a week. And the oldest boy can work Saturdays. No pay, of course. Call it restitution. Eleanor's hands curled into fists. Her nails bit into her palms. No. No, Nathaniel said simply. The word was final. Then I'll take her back. And the children. Law's on my side. Mordecai sat up straighter. I talked to Judge Whitman. He agrees. Family takes precedence. Law says I bought them fair. Chester's got the paperwork. Mordecai leaned forward, eyes glittering. I know the territorial judge personally. Good friend of mine. Golf together. He'll side with family. Blood matters more than some auction. Nathaniel was quiet for a long moment. The silence stretched. Then, you finished? What? I asked if you're finished talking. Nathaniel's voice was bored. That was worse than anger. Boredom meant he wasn't threatened, wasn't worried. Mordecai sputtered. You can't just, because if you're finished, I got work to do. Nathaniel shifted his weight slightly. The movement drew attention to the Colt on his hip. You want to sue? You want to talk to the judge? Talk. But you're not getting more money. You're not getting Eleanor or her children. And you're not stepping foot on my land again. Your land? Mordecai's laugh was sharp, angry. This is open territory. Wyoming's free range. I can go where I please. Not anymore. Nathaniel's hand moved to his gun, not drawing, just resting there. A reminder. This is my property, legal and registered with the Territorial Land Office. 300 acres surveyed and filed. You're trespassing. The big man spoke for the first time. His voice was surprisingly high, thin, didn't match his body. He can't shoot us for trespassing. Can't I? Nathaniel's eyes stayed on Mordecai. Wyoming's a big territory. A lot of ways a man can disappear. Bodies don't always turn up. Animals are hungry. Land's vast. You threatening me? Mordecai's voice cracked. The confidence was gone now. He'd miscalculated. Stating facts. The silence stretched like wire pulled taut, about to snap. Horses shifted nervously. The big man's hand drifted toward his gun, fingers flexing. Ezra straightened, no longer leaning. Thomas's fists tightened. I wouldn't. Ezra's voice carried a promise of violence. Not a threat, a certainty. 3 against 2, the big man said. He was trying to calculate odds, figure out if they could win this. Can you count? Ezra gestured with his chin. Eleanor turned. Ruth stood on the porch holding a rifle. A Winchester, Eleanor thought, though she didn't know guns well. Ruth's face was placid, calm as Sunday morning, like she held rifles on people every day. Maybe she did. 3 against 3, Ezra corrected. And Ruth don't miss. Mordecai looked between them. His face went from red to purple, veins standing out on his forehead. He looked like a man on the edge of a stroke. This ain't it over. Yes, it is, Nathaniel said quietly. There was finality in his tone, the kind of finality that came from meaning every word. Go home, Mordecai, while you still can, while I'm still feeling charitable. For a moment, Eleanor thought Mordecai would charge. His hand twitched toward his gun. His face worked with rage. Jacob grabbed his father's arm. Pa, let's go. Jacob! Mordecai started to argue with his son. Now, Pa, Jacob's voice was firm. The boy had more sense than his father. We ain't winning this. Mordecai jerked his reins hard. His horse's head snapped up, fighting the bit. The animal danced sideways, confused by the mixed signals. Mordecai glared at Eleanor. You'll regret this, all of you. You're making enemies you can't afford. Already got regrets, Nathaniel said. You ain't one of them. Mordecai spurred his horse viciously. The animal leaped forward. The 3 men wheeled and rode out, dust rising in their wake like smoke from a battlefield. The yard stayed silent until they disappeared over the rise. Then Thomas let out a breath he'd been holding. His whole body sagged, adrenaline draining away, leaving him shaking. That was stupid, he said. His voice was unsteady. Mordecai is stupid, Nathaniel finished. He turned to look at the boy. Stupid men are dangerous. They don't think through consequences. They just act. That makes them unpredictable. You think he'll come back? Eleanor asked. She felt cold despite the heat. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Probably. Nathaniel looked at her. His gray eyes were calm, steady. You scared? Eleanor thought about it, really thought. Yesterday she would have been terrified. Today, standing in this yard with these people, this scarred cowboy who'd bought at her, this half-native ranch hand with cold eyes and a quick draw, this Arapaho woman who held a rifle like she'd been born with it, she felt something else, something harder. No, she said. I'm angry. Nathaniel's mouth twitched, definitely a smile this time. Small, but real. Good, anger's useful. Anger keeps you sharp. Fear makes you stupid. Ruth lowered the rifle. I'm making lunch. Y'all wash up. She paused. And someone needs to check that north fence. If Mordecai's mad enough, he might come back tonight. Do something petty. She disappeared inside. The tension broke like a fever. Thomas sagged against the fence, his legs suddenly unreliable. Margaret had been writing the whole time, Eleanor realized. The girl's hands shook as she scribbled, but she documented everything, bearing witness. Recording their history so someone would know what happened to them. Benjamin emerged from behind the water trough where he'd hidden. That was amazing, he breathed. His eyes were bright with excitement, the danger not quite real to him yet. Mr. Nathaniel, you were like a gunfighter from the Penny Dreadfuls. Wasn't a gunfight, Nathaniel said. His voice went hard. Just talk, and you don't want gunfights, boy. Trust me on that. But you would have shot him, right? If he drew first. Nathaniel's face went harder. Eleanor watched him struggle with how to answer, how to teach this lesson without lying, but without glorifying violence either. Shooting ain't something to admire, boy. It's not exciting. It's not fun. It's something you do when there's absolutely no other choice left. But no buts, Nathaniel's voice sharpened. You think killing's easy? You think you pull a trigger and walk away fine? It stays with you. Every face, every shot, every man who fell because you squeezed that trigger. They visit you at night. You see them when you close your eyes. You hear them sometimes when it's quiet. He stopped, jaw tight, eyes distant, seeing something none of them could. Don't glorify it. Ever. Benjamin stepped back, properly chastened. The excitement drained from his face, replaced with confusion and a hint of fear. Not of Nathaniel, but of what Nathaniel had revealed about himself. They all went inside for lunch. Ruth had made soup, thick with vegetables and beef, bread, crusty and warm, dried apples for dessert. The meal was quiet. Thomas kept looking at Nathaniel like he was trying to solve a puzzle, trying to reconcile the calm man at the table with the one who'd stood down 3 armed men without blinking. Margaret wrote between bites, her journal never far from her hand. Eleanor wanted to read it someday, wanted to know what her daughter saw, how she made sense of this impossible situation. Maggie ate mechanically, autopilot. Benjamin stayed subdued, still processing Nathaniel's words about killing. After, Nathaniel stood. The chair scraped. Thomas, you're still with Ezra. That fence won't fix itself. Rest of you. He paused, looked at Eleanor. Eleanor, can I talk to you? Her stomach dropped. This was it. Whatever price he wanted, whatever he expected from her beyond work. She'd known it was coming. Men didn't buy women for $100 without expectations. Of course. He led her outside, away from the cabin. They walked toward the barn, Blue the dog trotting alongside, tail wagging with the simple joy dogs had. The animal liked Nathaniel, trusted him. Eleanor wanted to trust him too, but trust was expensive and she was broke. I need to know something, Nathaniel said. What? Can you shoot? Eleanor blinked. That wasn't what she'd expected. What? A gun. Can you shoot one? Yes, my father taught me. For snakes, mostly. When we'd go to my grandfather's farm. But I'm not very good. I never practiced enough. I'll get you a rifle, Winchester probably. Easy to handle. Keep it in the house. He stopped walking, faced her. His gray eyes were serious. Mordecai's not done. He'll come back. Probably when I'm out in the fields or away checking cattle. I need to know you can protect yourself and the children. Eleanor's mouth went dry. Her heart hammered. You really think he'd... Don't know what he'd do. Nathaniel's eyes searched hers, looking for something. Courage, maybe, or weakness. Rather not find out. This ain't Philadelphia. Out here, law is what you make it. Sheriff's 2 hours away on a fast horse. By the time help comes, help's too late. You need to be ready. I don't want to shoot anyone. The words came out small, frightened. She hated how she sounded. Neither do I. Lord knows I don't. Nathaniel's voice softened. But wanting and doing are different things. I've done a lot of things I didn't want to do. War teaches you that. Life teaches you that. He paused. I won't let anyone hurt you or your children. But I can't be everywhere at once. Ranch is 300 acres. Lot of ground to cover. So you need to be able to protect them when I can't. Eleanor's hands trembled. She clasped them together, trying to stop the shaking. All right. All right? Yes, teach me. She lifted her chin, tried to find the steel she'd need for this. When? Something shifted in Nathaniel's expression. Respect maybe, or approval. Tomorrow, after chores, Ezra will show you. Not you? I'm not patient enough for teaching. He turned back toward the cabin. Sure is. Plus, he's a better shot than me. You want to learn right? Learn from the best. They walked in silence. Eleanor's mind raced. Could she actually shoot someone? Pull a trigger knowing another human being would fall? Mordecai was awful, but he was still human. Still someone's father, someone's husband, however poorly he filled those roles. Then she thought of Thomas trying to stand tall on that auction platform, of Margaret shaking hands writing their story, of Benjamin's curiosity and Maggie's silence and Clara's innocence, of what men like Mordecai did to people they had power over. Yes, she could pull that trigger if she had to. For them, she could do anything. Thank you, Eleanor said, for this morning, for standing up to Mordecai. Wasn't for you. She stopped walking. What? Nathaniel stopped too, but he didn't turn around. Wasn't for you, he repeated. Was for me. I'm tired of men like Mordecai thinking they own the world, thinking they can take what they want and laws don't apply to them, thinking being born with money or the right name means you can do whatever you please. His voice went hard. I spent 4 years watching officers get boys killed because they were too stupid or too proud to listen to sense. Another 10 years watching men cheat and steal and call it business. I'm done watching. Eleanor understood then. This wasn't about her, wasn't about kindness or charity. This was about Nathaniel drawing a line, saying enough, pushing back against a world that ground up people and called it progress. Still, Eleanor said, thank you. He nodded once, kept walking. Eleanor stood there watching him limp toward the barn. This man was a puzzle. Hard edges, soft center, or maybe the opposite. Maybe he was soft edges hiding a hard center. She couldn't tell yet, but she wanted to understand him, wanted to know what made him tick, what drove him to stand in front of 3 armed men without flinching. The afternoon passed in work, endless work. Eleanor helped Ruth wash clothes in the creek. The water was freezing even in July, running off the mountains, carrying snowmelt and ice. Eleanor's hands went numb. Her back ached from bending. Her arms burned from wringing out heavy, wet fabric. But the work felt good, purposeful, real. He'll come back, Ruth said, scrubbing a shirt against the washing board. I know. And next time he'll bring more men, more guns. I know that too. Eleanor twisted water from a pair of Thomas's trousers. They were too small now. The boy was growing fast. She'd need to let out the seams or find fabric for new ones. One more thing to worry about. Ruth looked at her. You scared? Terrified, Eleanor admitted. No point in lying. Ruth would see through it. But I can't show it, not to the children. They're already scared enough. They already know. Ruth wrung out the shirt with practiced efficiency. Children always know what their parents are feeling. You can't hide it, but you can show them how to carry fear and keep moving. That's what they need to see. Eleanor thought about that, about teaching her children to be afraid and functional both, about showing them strength that wasn't the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. That night, Eleanor lay in the small bed Nathaniel had given up for her, listening. The house settled around her, creaks and saws, normal sounds, but her ears strained for hoofbeats, shouts, gunfire, the sounds of Mordecai returning with an army. Nothing came, but she couldn't sleep. Every sound was magnified. Every branch scraping the window was a footstep. Every gust of wind was a voice. She finally slept near dawn, exhausted beyond fear, and woke to Clara crying. She stumbled into the main room, disoriented. Nathaniel was already there, heating water over the fire. He was fully dressed despite the early hour. Either he'd never gone to bed, or he'd been up for hours. She's teething, Eleanor said, taking Clara from the makeshift cradle Nathaniel had fashioned from a drawer. The baby's cheeks were flushed, her little fists rubbing at her mouth. Ruth left willow bark for the pain. He gestured to the table where a bundle of dried bark sat in a bowl. Eleanor mixed the bark in water, gave it to Clara on a cloth to suck. The baby quieted, hiccuping, the pain easing. Eleanor held her, swaying slightly, the motion automatic. You didn't sleep, Nathaniel observed. Neither did you. I don't sleep much anymore. Haven't for years. They stood in the dim, pre-dawn light, the fire crackling between them. Clara dozed against Eleanor's shoulder, thumb in her mouth. The moment felt suspended, private, like they existed outside normal time. "Can I ask you something?" Eleanor said. "You can ask." Nathaniel poured himself coffee, didn't offer her any. He'd learned she didn't drink it this early. "Why'd you really buy us?" Nathaniel was quiet so long Eleanor thought he wouldn't answer. He stared into the fire, his scarred face highlighted by the flickering light. She could see the weight he carried, the lines carved by grief and time and hard decisions. "Then saw my son in your Thomas." Eleanor's breath caught. She waited knowing there was more, not wanting to push but needing to understand. Same age, same look in his eyes like the world's against him, but he's going to fight anyway. Nathaniel's voice roughened, went raw. "Daniel had that look from the day he was born. Nurse said he wouldn't make it. His lungs were too weak, not developed right, but he fought. 3 days of fighting, this tiny thing no bigger than a loaf of bread, fighting with everything he had." He stopped, swallowed hard. "Lost anyway." "I'm sorry, Eleanor whispered. Inadequate words. What could you say to a man who'd watched his child die? "When I saw Thomas standing there on that platform, fists up, trying to protect you all." Nathaniel shook his head. "Couldn't walk away. Wouldn't have been right. That boy deserves someone to stand with him." They all did. "So it was for Thomas?" "For him. For all of you. For me." He finally looked at her. His eyes were wet. "Selfish maybe, but honest. I bought you because I was lonely. Because this house was too quiet. Because I was dying inside and I needed a reason to keep breathing. That's the truth, not noble, not kind, just desperate." Eleanor shifted Clara to her other shoulder. The baby was fully asleep now, warm and heavy. "Loneliness isn't selfish, it's human. We all need people. Connection, purpose, maybe." Nathaniel didn't sound convinced. The moment stretched between them, comfortable despite the heavy subject. Then Nathaniel cleared his throat, breaking the spell. "Sun's coming. Got work." He left. Eleanor stood alone with Clara, watching dawn break through the window, gold and pink spreading across the sky like paint spilling across canvas. She thought about what he'd said, about Daniel, about loneliness, about truth. This man had saved them, yes, but they might be saving him too, giving him purpose, filling the silence. Bringing life back into this house of ghosts, the thought settled warm in her chest. The next 3 days fell into rhythm, work from dawn to dusk, endless and exhausting. Eleanor learned the routines of ranch life, feeding chickens, milking Betsy the cow who did indeed have opinions about everything, washing, cooking, mending. Her hands blistered, then formed calluses. Her body ached, then grew stronger. Muscles she didn't know she had announced themselves through pain, then adapted. Thomas worked with Ezra from first light to last, learning about fences and cattle and horses. He came back each night exhausted but proud, standing taller, moving with new confidence. Ezra was teaching him more than ranch work. He was teaching him how to be a man, not the kind of man who used fists and threats, but the kind who used skill and judgment and quiet competence. Margaret helped Ruth with preserves, learning to can vegetables for winter. The girl was quiet but capable, her careful attention to detail serving her well. She still wrote in her journal every night, documenting their new life with the same intensity she documented the auction. Benjamin discovered the barn cats and appointed himself their protector. He named them all, made them nests, brought them scraps from meals. Ruth pretended to be annoyed, but Eleanor noticed she always made sure there were extra scraps. Maggie slowly relaxed, the constant fear in her eyes fading degree by degree. She started talking again, just a word or two at first, then more. Her voice was small but present. Clara learned to clap and did it constantly, delighted by her own ability to make noise. She clapped when she was happy, when she was fed, when she saw Nathaniel, when Blue walked by. The sound became the soundtrack of their days. On the third afternoon, Nathaniel taught Eleanor to shoot. He'd changed his mind about having Ezra do it. Never explained why. Just showed up after lunch with a Winchester rifle and said, "Come on." They went to a clearing behind the barn, out of sight of the house, away from the children. He handed her the rifle. It was heavier than she remembered, awkward in her hands. "Rifle's 30-30 caliber," Nathaniel said. 15 rounds, lever action. "See this?" He demonstrated. Pull the lever down, it ejects the spent shell, loads a new one, push it back up, you're ready to fire again. Simple. Reliable. Eleanor nodded, trying to absorb the information. Now, stance. Feet shoulder width apart, left foot slightly forward if you're right-handed. Plant yourself. Recoil's going to try to knock you back. Don't let it. Eleanor adjusted her stance. Nathaniel walked around her, correcting small things. A shift of her shoulders, the angle of her feet. Stock goes tight against your shoulder, right here. He tapped the spot. Snug. If there's space, the kick'll hurt. You'll bruise. Hold it tight, you'll be fine. Eleanor pulled the stock tight, feeling the hardness of it against her shoulder. Now sight. You got a front sight and a rear sight. Line them up with your target. Both sights and target, all in a straight line. He'd set up a target, a piece of wood maybe 8 inches square, nailed to a post 20 yards away. Eleanor squinted, tried to line up the sights. Don't squint. Both eyes open. Trust me. Eleanor opened her other eye. It felt wrong, unnatural, but she could see better. Breathe out when you squeeze the trigger, he said. Don't pull. Don't jerk. Squeeze gentle, like you're trying not to break an egg. The shot should surprise you. Eleanor took a breath, let half of it out, squeezed. The rifle kicked hard. Her shoulder took the impact. The shot went wide, missing the target by feet. Again. She tried, missed again. Frustration built hot in her chest. You're thinking too much. Just feel it. Feel what? Her voice came sharp. The moment. The stillness right before the shot. His hand covered hers on the stock, adjusting the angle. Feel that. That moment between heartbeats. That's when you shoot. Eleanor felt his hand, warm and calloused, felt her heart beating too fast. Was that the fear of Mordecai or something else? Yes. That's when. She tried again. This time the wood splintered. Not a clean hit, but contact. Better, Nathaniel said. Not praise exactly, just acknowledgement of progress. They practiced until her shoulder ached from the recoil, until she could hit the target 3 times out of 5, until the sun started dropping toward the horizon and chores needed doing. That'll do, Nathaniel said. You won't be a sharpshooter, but you can protect yourself. Remember, aim center mass. Don't try for fancy shots. Just hit the biggest target you can. Eleanor lowered the rifle. Her arms trembled from holding it. I don't want to use this on a person. Neither do I. I've had to before, and it never gets easier. But if Mordecai comes, he didn't finish. Didn't need to. I know. She met his eyes, tried to find the strength to mean it. I'll do what I have to. He nodded. Something passed between them in that moment. Understanding. Recognition. They were both people who would do terrible things to protect the people they loved. That made them the same, even if everything else about them was different. That night, Eleanor dreamed of gunfire. Woke sweating, heart racing like a trapped bird. She crept to the window. The yard was empty, peaceful, stars overhead like scattered diamonds. Wyoming stars were different from Philadelphia stars. Brighter, closer, like she could reach up and touch them. She was turning back to bed when she saw him, Nathaniel limping up the hill behind the barn toward the oak tree. Sunday, she remembered. Ruth had mentioned he went there on Sundays, rain or shine, to talk to his dead wife and son. Eleanor watched him reach the tree, stand before 2 small crosses. His head bowed like a man at prayer. His shoulders bent under a weight she couldn't see but could imagine. She turned away, giving him privacy, but her chest ached for him, for the man who carried 7 years of grief and still found room to care about a widow and 5 children who weren't his responsibility. Morning came with shouting. Eleanor jolted awake, confused, terrified. Her heart hammered. She grabbed the rifle Nathaniel had given her, the one she'd practiced with yesterday. It felt more familiar now, like it belonged in her hands even though she hated that fact. She ran to the window. 3 wagons in the yard. No, 4. 8 men, maybe 10, all mounted or standing beside wagons looking aggressive. Mordecai at the front on his fancy horse. The one he'd bought to show off. The one he'd never actually worked. This was it. This was the fight they'd been waiting for. Eleanor's hands shook. Her breath came fast. But she'd made a promise to herself, to her children. She wouldn't hide anymore. She ran into the main room. Nathaniel was already there, pulling on his boots, his face set and grim. Ezra appeared from the barn, gun drawn this time, done with warnings. Ruth from the back room where she sometimes slept, carrying her rifle like it was part of her arm. "Stay inside," Nathaniel told Eleanor. "No." Her voice was steady despite the fear. That surprised her. "Eleanor, they're here for me. I'm not hiding." She checked the rifle, made sure it was loaded like he'd taught her. "I'm coming out." His jaw tightened, but he nodded. He'd promised her choice. This was her choice. Even if it was stupid, even if it was dangerous. It was hers. They stepped onto the porch together. The children crowded behind them. Thomas pushing forward, wanting to be part of this, needing to protect. Ruth holding the younger ones back with one strong arm while keeping her rifle ready with the other. Mordecai sat on his wagon and he was grinning. That was the worst part. The man thought he'd won already. "Got the territorial judge here, Cross," Mordecai called out. "Judge Whitman, he's got something to say about your little purchase." A man stepped down from the second wagon. Older, maybe 60, gray beard carefully trimmed, black coat despite the heat. He looked uncomfortable, like he didn't want to be here, but obligation or money or something had forced his hand. "Mr. Cross," the judge said. His voice was reedy, uncertain, not the voice of a man comfortable with his authority. "I'm afraid there's been a complaint." "Let me guess," Nathaniel said. His voice was flat, bored. "Mordecai claims the auction was illegal." "Not illegal exactly, but improper. Family law in the Wyoming Territory states that widows and orphans should be placed with blood relatives when possible. It's meant to preserve family units, even when those relatives sold them like cattle." Nathaniel's voice stayed level, but Eleanor heard the anger underneath. The judge flinched, but pressed on. "I understand your position, but the law is clear." "Do you?" Nathaniel interrupted. "Do you understand what it's like to watch children starve? To see a woman stripped of her dignity? To stand by while someone auctions off human beings for debts that don't exist?" "The law is the law, Mr. Cross." "Then the law is wrong, and men who enforce wrong laws are wrong. That makes you wrong, Judge." Silence fell. No one interrupted Nathaniel when he spoke like that, with that quiet certainty that came from being absolutely sure of his moral ground. Mordecai laughed, the sound ugly. "You can't fight the law, Cross. You can't fight me. Hand them over peaceful, or we'll take them by force. Your choice." "Try it," Nathaniel said. Not a threat, an invitation. The men in the wagon stirred. Hands moved toward guns. The big man from before was there, and two others Eleanor didn't recognize. Hired guns, probably. Men who killed for money. This was happening. They were actually going to fight. People were going to die. Ezra stepping forward. "Anyone who draws on this property gets buried on it." He'd said it before, but this time it felt different. More real. More certain. "Big talk for one man," someone shouted. Eleanor couldn't see who. "Who said he's alone?" The voice came from the barn. A figure stepped out, then another, then three more. Eleanor's eyes widened. Men she'd never seen before, all armed with rifles and shotguns, all standing with Nathaniel, all ready. "Thought you were alone, Imad, Mordecai said, but his voice wavered. The confidence was cracking. "I am, mostly." Nathaniel gestured to the men without taking his eyes off Mordecai. "These are my neighbors, ranchers from up north. Johnson, Taylor, the Garrett brothers, and Bill Sampson. Heard there might be trouble. Came to help." It was true. Eleanor could see it in their faces, in the way they stood. These men knew Nathaniel, trusted him, owed him something. They weren't mercenaries, they were friends. The judge cleared his throat, trying to regain control of the situation. "Mr. Cross, this doesn't change the law. I have a legal obligation." "Your legal obligation is to protect the innocent," Nathaniel interrupted. "Not to help thieves and liars." "Now see here," the judge started to bluster. "Rebecca Thornton." The words came from behind them all. Female, sharp as a knife. Everyone turned. A woman stepped down from a fourth wagon Eleanor hadn't noticed before. Tall, maybe 60 years old, dressed in dark wool that must have been sweltering in the July heat. Her face was stern, carved from granite, but her eyes held something else. Intelligence. determination, justice. Who are you? Mordecai demanded. Rebecca Thornton, territorial advocate for women and children, appointed by the governor himself. She walked forward with the confidence of someone who knew she had power and knew how to use it. She looked at the judge without fear. You didn't think I'd hear about this, Whitman? You're slipping, getting sloppy in your old age. The judge paled, actually paled. Mrs. Thornton, this is a family matter this is an abduction matter. Rebecca pulled papers from her leather bag, crisp documents with official seals. I have statements here from 3 witnesses in Laramie, all stating that Mordecai Hayes forced his brother's widow onto an auction block under false debt claims. False, Mordecai sputtered. Spit flew from his mouth. I have papers, official documents proving the debt. Forged papers. Rebecca's voice could have cut glass. She held up more documents. Your handwriting, Mordecai, not your brother's. I had them analyzed by a documents expert in Cheyenne. You want to see the report? The yard went dead silent. You could hear the wind in the grass, the nervous shifting of horses, someone's ragged breathing. Eleanor's hands shook. She gripped the rifle tighter to hide it. You mean the debt wasn't real? Oh, there was a debt, Rebecca said, turning to Eleanor with something like sympathy. $50. Your husband did owe money, but not $500. Mordecai added a 0 and forged his brother's signature to make it look legitimate. She looked back at Nathaniel. You paid twice what was actually owed, Mr. Cross. You've been cheated as much as Mrs. Hayes was. Nathaniel said nothing. His face revealed nothing. But Eleanor saw his jaw work, saw the muscle twitch. He'd known, or suspected. That's why he'd sent for Rebecca. Mordecai's face went from red to purple. The veins in his forehead stood out like ropes. That's a lie. A damned lie. The judge saw the papers himself. The judge saw what you showed him, Rebecca said calmly. She turned to Judge Whitman, which makes you either complicit in fraud or incompetent in your duties. Either way, you're done here. Unless you'd like me to file formal complaints with the territorial government. The judge's mouth opened, closed, opened again. He looked like a fish drowning in air. I assumed the documents were legitimate. It's customary to trust family members in debt matters. You assumed wrong, dangerously wrong. Rebecca's voice could freeze fire. These people, she gestured to Eleanor and her children, almost lost everything because you were too lazy to verify documents. How many other families have you done this to? How many other widows have you failed? The judge said nothing. What could he say? Rebecca turned to the men in the wagons. These people need to leave now, before I have the territorial marshal arrest every one of you for attempted kidnapping under color of law. You can't, Mordecai started. I can and I will. You have 5 minutes to clear this property, starting now. Mordecai looked at the judge. The judge looked at his boots. The hired guns looked at each other, calculating whether they were being paid enough for this. Apparently not. They started backing toward their horses. Mordecai's face worked. Rage, fear, disbelief, all fighting for dominance. This ain't over. You hear me, Cross? This ain't over. Yes, it is, Rebecca said. And if you come near this family again, ever, I'll make it my personal mission to ensure you spend the next 10 years in territorial prison. Are we absolutely clear? Mordecai looked at her, at Nathaniel, at the armed ranchers who hadn't lowered their guns. He jerked his reins so hard his horse's head snapped up. Let's go. The wagons turned, the men followed. Within minutes they were gone, dust trailing behind them like the smoke of a retreating army. But this time Eleanor knew it was different. This time they weren't coming back. The yard stayed silent for a long moment. Then Rebecca approached Eleanor. Up close, she was older than Eleanor had thought, lines carved deep around her eyes and mouth. Lines earned through hard work and harder fights. Mrs. Hayes, are you and your children safe here? Eleanor looked at Nathaniel standing beside her, at the cabin behind them, at her children alive and unhurt. Yes, we're safe. And you wish to remain? I do. No hesitation, complete certainty. Rebecca nodded, satisfied. Then I'll file the paperwork. The auction sale will be voided as fraudulent. You'll be granted independent status as a widow with dependent children under territorial law. Mordecai Hayes will have no legal claim to you or your property. The debt will be corrected to the actual amount owed, which Mr. Cross has more than satisfied. Thank you, Eleanor whispered. Inadequate words for someone who just saved her life, but all she had. Rebecca smiled, brief and warm. Thank Mr. Cross. He's the one who sent for me. Eleanor turned to Nathaniel slowly. You sent for her? 2 days ago. He shifted his weight, uncomfortable with the attention. Had Ezra ride to Cheyenne, took him all night and half the next day. But how did you know about the forged papers? Didn't know for certain. Nathaniel met her eyes. But I knew Mordecai, knew the kind of man he was. Figured if I got someone official looking into it, they'd find something. The man's too stupid to cover his tracks properly. Eleanor's throat closed. This man, this scarred, limping, grief-worn man had fought for them. Not with violence, though he was clearly capable of it, but with law, with preparation, with thinking 3 steps ahead. I don't know how to thank you, she managed. Don't need thanks. He looked away, focusing on Rebecca. You'll stay for supper? It's a long ride back to Cheyenne. You should rest the horses at least. I'd be honored, Rebecca said. The neighbors started dispersing. One by one they approached Nathaniel, shook his hand, accepted his thanks. Eleanor realized these weren't just neighbors. These were men who owed Nathaniel their lives or their livelihoods. Men he'd helped in ways she didn't know and probably never would. That's who Nathaniel was, a man who helped quietly and called in favors only when absolutely necessary. The judge slunk off in his wagon, properly shamed, his career probably over after this. Eleanor didn't feel bad for him. That night, after Rebecca left with promises to file all the paperwork, after the children had been fed and put to bed, still buzzing with excitement and relief, Eleanor found Nathaniel on the porch. He sat in his usual chair, legs stretched out, staring at the stars like they held answers to questions he hadn't figured out how to ask yet. Can I sit? She asked. It's your porch too. She sat on the step, close but not too close. The night was cool, pleasant. The kind of Wyoming night that made you forget the brutal days. You saved us. Again. Just did what was right. It was more than that. She turned to look at him. Really look. Tried to see past the scars and the grief to the man underneath. You didn't have to send for Rebecca. You didn't have to gather your friends. You could have just kept us, told Mordecai to go to hell and dared him to do something about it. No one would have known the difference. I would have known. His voice was quiet but firm. So I don't want you here because I bought you. Don't want you here because I own you or because some piece of paper says you're mine. He paused, still not looking at her. I want you here because you cause it. Because every morning you wake up and decide to stay. That's the only way this works. The words hung in the night air between them, heavy with meaning Eleanor was only beginning to understand. Why does that matter? She asked softly. Nathaniel was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, because Catherine never got to choose. Eleanor waited. This was important. She could feel it. I brought her west, Nathaniel continued. His voice was rough, full of old pain. She didn't want to come. Begged me to stay in St. Louis near her family, her friends, everything she knew. But I was young and stupid and stubborn. Thought I knew better. Thought adventure and opportunity mattered more than her happiness. He stopped, swallowed hard. She died hating it here. Hating me maybe. And I have to live with that. With knowing I dragged her somewhere she never wanted to be, and it killed her. Maybe she didn't hate you. You, Eleanor said. How would you know? Not challenging, just asking. Because you loved her enough to remember it hurt her. To care that she was unhappy. A man she hated wouldn't torture himself with that. He'd just say she was weak or foolish. You don't do that. They sat together in comfortable silence, his hand warm in hers. The stars wheeled overhead. The creek murmured in the distance. Somewhere a coyote called, lonely and free. Eleanor thought about choice, about how Nathaniel had given her what no one else had, the freedom to leave. And in giving her that freedom, he'd given her a reason to stay. Not obligation, not gratitude, not fear. Choice, that's what made this different. That's what made this real. She squeezed his hand. He squeezed back. No more words were needed. The next morning brought a different kind of worry. Ezra rode in from checking the north pasture, his face tight. He found Nathaniel in the barn, Eleanor nearby tending to a scraped knee on Benjamin. "Boss, we got a problem." Nathaniel looked up. "Mordecai again?" "No, someone else. Found boot prints up on the north ridge. Fresh. Not ranch boots. City boots. Expensive leather. Narrow heel." Ezra's jaw tightened. Whoever it was, they were examining the rock outcroppings. Eleanor's stomach dropped. Why would anyone do that? Ezra and Nathaniel exchanged a look. "Show me," Nathaniel said. Eleanor followed them up to the ridge, clear boot prints in the soft earth leading to exposed rock. Nathaniel knelt, scraped at the stone with his knife. Metallic flecks glinted in the sunlight. "Silver," he said quietly. Eleanor's breath caught. "How much?" "Don't know. Could be traces. Could be a vein." He stood, studied the boot prints. "But someone knows. Someone who can afford expensive boots came looking." Ezra crouched by the prints. "Not Mordecai. He wears work boots. These are Eastern-made, the kind a businessman wears." Samuel Wright, Eleanor remembered him at the auction. Those polished boots, so out of place in dusty Laramie. "Right," she said. Nathaniel nodded grimly. "If there's silver here and Wright knows, he'll want this land, badly enough to do whatever it takes." They rode back in silence. Eleanor's brief hope from the night before felt fragile now. They'd defeated Mordecai, but Samuel Wright was different, smarter, richer, more patient, more dangerous. Stone Creek Ranch. 3 weeks later. Nathaniel turned to look at her then, really look. His eyes were wet, reflecting starlight. "I want you to choose," he said quietly, intensely. "Every single day. Choose to stay or choose to go. But choose. Don't just stay because you have nowhere else to go or because you think you owe Maud. Stay because you want to be here." Eleanor's hands trembled. She clasped them in her lap. "I choose to stay. Today you do." "Yes, today I do." She held his gaze. "And tomorrow I'll choose again. And the day after that. For as long as I'm here, it'll be because I chose it." He nodded, seemed to accept that. Looked back at the stars. Stone Creek Ranch. 3 weeks later. The rhythm of ranch life had settled into Eleanor's bones. Wake before dawn, start the fire, help Ruth with breakfast, gather eggs, feed chickens, wash clothes, mend fences, tend the garden, cook, clean, collapse into bed, repeat. Her hands were no longer soft. Calluses had formed thick and yellow across her palms. Her back no longer ached constantly, had adapted to the constant bending and lifting. Her arms had grown stronger from carrying Clara, from hauling water, from work that never ended. She was changing, becoming someone different, someone harder. Thomas had grown an inch, maybe two. His shoulders were filling out from working with Ezra. He spoke less but moved with more confidence. He could rope a steer now, mend a fence, shoe a horse, skills that would serve him for life. Margaret's journal had filled up. Ruth had found her a new one, leather-bound and beautiful. The girl wrote every night by candlelight, documenting their transformation from auction platform to ranch life. Eleanor wondered if someday those words would matter to someone, if they'd be history. Benjamin had declared himself the ranch's official animal doctor. Any creature with a limp or a wound ended up in his care. Nathaniel had given him a box for supplies, bandages, salves, needles for stitching. The boy took it seriously, treated it like sacred duty. Maggie talked now, not constantly but regularly. Her voice was small but present. Progress. Clara had taken her first real steps 3 days ago, walked straight to Nathaniel and grabbed his leg. He'd picked her up, held her while she laughed, and Eleanor had seen something in his face. Joy, maybe. Or the memory of joy, like he was remembering what it felt like. Life was almost normal, almost safe. That should have been a warning. Eleanor was in the chicken coop with Maggie when she heard the horse. Single rider coming fast. Her stomach dropped. She grabbed Maggie's hand, pulled her toward the cabin. But it wasn't Mordecai. A woman sat the horse, riding like she'd been born to it. Dark hair falling from beneath her hat. Travel-worn clothes, a carpet bag tied behind the saddle. She looked tired, dusty, like she'd ridden hard for days. Nathaniel emerged from the barn, Ezra beside him. Both men stopped dead when they saw the rider. Anna, Nathaniel's voice was barely audible. The woman dismounted, stood there holding the reins. Hello, brother. Eleanor's breath caught. Brother. Nathaniel had a sister. You're dead. Nathaniel's voice was flat, emotionless, but Eleanor saw his hand shake. Letter said you died. Cholera in St. Louis. 5 years ago. I know. The woman Anna dropped the reins. Let the horse stand. I wrote that letter. I lied. I'm sorry, Nathaniel. I'm so sorry. The yard went silent. Even the chickens seemed to sense the tension. Went quiet. You let me think you were dead. Nathaniel's voice broke. For 5 years, I mourned you. He stopped. His jaw worked. Wow, eh? Anna's face crumpled. Because I was ashamed. I'd made mistakes, bad ones. Married a man you told me not to marry. Had his child. He left us both. Tears fell freely. I was desperate, broke, alone. I did things I'm not proud of to survive. Things I thought you'd never forgive. What things? Nathaniel's voice was hard now. Eleanor had never heard him sound like that. Anna didn't answer directly. I heard about Catherine, about Daniel. I wanted to come then, but I was too ashamed, too afraid. But when I heard you'd gotten married again, that you had a family, I thought, she gestured helplessly, maybe it was time. Time to come home. Time to ask forgiveness. You let me think you were dead, Nathaniel repeated. The words seemed to be all he could manage. Eleanor stepped forward. Someone had to. Anna, I'm Eleanor. Nathaniel's... She paused. What were they exactly? I live here with my children. You must be exhausted. Come inside. We'll get you fed, give you water. Anna looked at her with desperate gratitude. You'd let me stay? After what I just said? Your family, Eleanor said simply. She looked at Nathaniel. Aren't you? Nathaniel's face worked. Anger and grief and something else warring for dominance. Finally, he nodded. Yeah, family. Anna burst into tears. Eleanor led her inside, away from the men, away from the judgment. Ruth appeared, took one look at Anna, and started heating water. They're a child? Ruth asked quietly. Anna nodded. In the wagon. I left him there. Didn't know if... She couldn't finish. Get him, Ruth said. Children belong with their mothers. Anna went back outside, returned with a boy, maybe 8 years old, thin and wary. He had Nathaniel's eyes. The same gray, the same intensity. This is Michael, Anna said. Your nephew. The boy stared at everyone with the wariness of a child who'd learned not to trust adults. Eleanor recognized that look. Her children had worn it on the auction platform. Hello, Michael. Eleanor said gently, I'm Eleanor. These are my children. She introduced them one by one. You hungry? The boy nodded, still suspicious. Ruth put food in front of him. He ate like he wasn't sure when the next meal would come. Eleanor understood that too. That night, after Anna and Michael were settled in the barn loft, Eleanor found Nathaniel on the hill, standing before the 2 graves under the oak tree. His head was bowed, his shoulders bent under weight that had just gotten heavier. You're angry, Eleanor said softly. Not a question. I'm confused. He didn't turn. She let me think she was dead. That's unforgivable. Is it? Isn't it? He turned to look at her. His face was raw with pain. Eleanor moved closer. I don't know. But I know something about shame, about doing things you regret, about running from family because you think you're not worthy of them. That's different. Does it? She touched his arm gently. Nathaniel, you bought me at an auction because you were lonely, because you needed purpose. Anna lied because she was ashamed, because she was trying to survive. Both of you were dealing with pain in the best way you knew how. The methods were different, but the reason was the same. Nathaniel was quiet for a long time. I don't know if I can forgive her. You don't have to decide tonight. Eleanor's voice was gentle. But that boy, Michael, he needs family. He needs an uncle who's strong and kind and knows what it's like to hurt. She paused, choosing her words carefully. He needs what Thomas needed, what all my children needed. Someone to stand with them. You could be that, if you choose to. Nathaniel looked at her. You're good with my children. Why not one more? Because they're not just yours, they're ours. Eleanor held his gaze. And yes, one more, if you are willing. He turned back to the graves. Blood doesn't make family, he said quietly. Choice does. You taught me that. No, Eleanor said. You taught me that. I'm just reminding you. He stood there for a long moment, then he started down the hill. I'll talk to her tomorrow, not tonight. Tonight I need to think. Eleanor watched him go, gave him space, gave him time. The next morning, Nathaniel talked to Anna. They walked to the creek out of earshot. Eleanor watched from the garden, trying not to be obvious about it. Their conversation lasted hours. At points, Anna cried. At points, Nathaniel looked like he wanted to walk away. But he stayed. When they returned, both had red eyes. But Anna was smiling slightly. Nathaniel looked lighter. She's staying, Nathaniel told Eleanor. Her and Michael. She can help with the ranch, with the children. Earn her keep. She doesn't have to earn anything, sir, Eleanor said firmly. I know, but she wants to. Says she's done running, done lying, wants to be useful. He paused. And I want her here, despite everything. She's my sister. That has to mean something. Eleanor felt warmth spread through her chest. It means everything. Life adjusted again. Anna proved herself hardworking, quiet, grateful for a second chance. She helped Eleanor in the medical office. Eleanor had started running out of the small room Nathaniel had built. Anna learned herbs, remedies, how to stitch wounds and set bones. She had gentle hands and patience with frightened patients. Michael slowly relaxed. He and Benjamin became inseparable, getting into the kind of trouble boys always found. Thomas took Michael under his wing, teaching him ranch work the way Ezra taught Thomas. The boy blossomed with structure and kindness. Weeks passed, summer deepened, the ranch thrived. Cattle grew fat on good grass. The garden produced more vegetables than they could eat. Eleanor started canning for winter, filling shelves with jars that gleamed like jewels. One afternoon, Eleanor was treating a patient, a rancher's wife with a badly infected hand, when Constance arrived, Mordecai's wife. Ex-wife now, Eleanor had heard. The divorce was final. Constance looked different, hair shorter, practical, dress simple, face thinner but calmer. She carried a basket covered with cloth. Eleanor, Constance said, I need to talk to you. Eleanor finished bandaging the rancher's wife, collected her payment, 2 chickens and a pound of butter, and turned to Constance. What can I do for you? The store is doing well, very well. Constance twisted her hands. Old nervous habit. Too well for me to manage alone. I was hoping maybe Margaret could help after school. Eleanor's first instinct was to refuse, protect her daughter from this woman who tried to take Clara. But she saw the hope in Constance's eyes, the genuine need. Ask her yourself, Eleanor said. It's her choice. Margaret said yes, started working 3 afternoons a week, came home with stories about inventory, about customers, about Constance teaching her accounting. The girl loved it, thrived on the order and logic of business. Thomas asked Nathaniel to teach him about cattle ranching properly, not just the work, but the business. Nathaniel agreed, started taking him on longer rides, teaching him about breeding lines, market prices, when to sell and when to hold. The boy absorbed it all like a sponge. Benjamin declared he wanted to be a veterinarian, a real one with training. Nathaniel nodded seriously, said the world needed good veterinarians, started saving money for when the boy was old enough for schooling. Maggie came fully out of her shell, started singing while she worked. Her voice was beautiful, clear, and high. Ruth said she sang like an angel. Nathaniel arranged for a music teacher to come once a week from Laramie. The expense was significant, but he didn't hesitate. Clara took her first real steps, walked straight to Nathaniel, fell into his arms laughing. He caught her, held her, and Eleanor saw tears in his eyes. Good tears this time. Life was good, almost too good. Then the letter came. Ezra brought it back from town, official envelope, territorial seal, addressed to Nathaniel Cross. Eleanor watched him open it, watched his face go pale. What is it? She asked. Samuel Wright. Nathaniel's voice was flat. The boarding house owner, the one who bid on you at the auction. Eleanor remembered. The man with cold eyes who wanted kitchen help. He's claiming I owe him money. Says I damaged his business reputation by interfering with his bid. Wants $200. Nathaniel looked up. It's legal nonsense, but he's filed with the territorial court. I have to respond, or he wins by default. That's ridiculous, Eleanor said. You can't owe him money for buying me instead of him. No, but I can be tied up in court for months. Cost me legal fees I don't have. Miss work I can't afford to miss. Nathaniel crumpled the letter. This is about the silver. What's silver? Nathaniel looked at her for a long moment, then sighed. There's silver on this land, in the hills behind the ranch. A prospector told Mordecai about it last year. That's why he wanted you gone, so he could buy the land cheap after I failed. Eleanor's stomach dropped. How much silver? Don't know exactly, but enough to matter. Enough that men will kill for it. Samuel Wright wants the land too, Eleanor said slowly, understanding. He's smarter than Mordecai. Can't just attack. Not after Rebecca's involved. So he's using the law. Tie me up in court, drain my resources, force me to sell. Nathaniel threw the letter in the fire. I won't give him the satisfaction. What are you going to do? Fight. His jaw was set. And win. But fighting costs money. Nathaniel hired a lawyer from Cheyenne, paid him $50 just to start. The lawyer said the case was weak, but would require Nathaniel to appear in court multiple times, defend himself against vague accusations. Weeks passed. The court dates kept getting delayed. Each delay cost money. Nathaniel started looking gaunt, worried. The ranch work suffered because he was gone so often. Thomas and Ezra tried to compensate, but they couldn't do everything. Eleanor watched him slowly crumble under the pressure. The man who'd stood down Mordecai without flinching was being destroyed by paperwork and legal fees. She couldn't let that happen. One night, after everyone was asleep, Eleanor sat down with the ranch books. Nathaniel kept meticulous records. Income, expenses, profits, losses. She studied them for hours, looking for patterns, for solutions. The answer was obvious. Painful, but obvious. The next morning, she found Nathaniel in the barn. I'm going to work, she announced. He looked up from the saddle he was mending. You already work, more than anyone. I mean for money, real money, the medical office. She crossed her arms. People come to me now, from all over. I treat them, they pay in chickens and butter. But they'd pay in cash if I asked. Actual cash. Eleanor, don't. Her voice was firm. Don't tell me I don't need to. Don't tell me you'll handle it. We're in this together. That's what partnership means. I can bring in $30, maybe $40 a month if I charge proper rates. That's your legal fees right there. Nathaniel stared at her. You'd do that? I'm doing that. Starting tomorrow, I'm charging actual money for actual medical care. Anna can help. We'll split the work. She stepped closer. You saved us. Now let me help save you. His eyes were wet. I don't deserve you. Probably not, Eleanor said with a small smile. But you're stuck with me anyway. She started charging for medical services. Word spread. A real doctor, people said, even if she's a woman. Better than riding 2 days to Cheyenne for a real physician. Patients came from 50 miles away. Broken bones, difficult births, fevers that wouldn't break. Eleanor treated them all. Charged fair rates. Saved every penny. Within 2 months, she'd saved $80. Combined with what Nathaniel had put aside, it was enough to pay the lawyer through the end of the case. Samuel Wright's lawsuit dragged on for 4 months. Then suddenly it collapsed. The territorial judge, a different one this time, threw it out as frivolous, ordered Wright to pay Nathaniel's legal costs. Nathaniel came home that day looking 10 years younger. He swept Eleanor up, spun her around despite his bad leg. We won. It's over. He can't touch us now. But Eleanor knew better. Men like Samuel Wright didn't give up. They just changed tactics. She was right. 2 weeks later, fire broke out on the North Ridge. Someone had set it deliberately. Ezra found boot prints. The fire spread toward the ranch, eating through dry summer grass like a hungry thing. Everyone fought. Nathaniel, Ezra, Anna, even the children. They dug fire breaks, beat flames with wet blankets, worked through the night. By dawn, the fire was out. The North Ridge was charred black, but the ranch stood. The buildings were safe. But they'd been lucky. Next time they might not be. We need to end this, Nathaniel said. His face was black with soot. Permanently. How? Eleanor asked. I'm going to make Wright an offer he can't refuse. The next day, Nathaniel rode to town. He found Samuel Wright at the boarding house, confronted him in front of witnesses. I know about the silver, Nathaniel said. I know you want my land. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to mine that silver. Make my fortune, and there's not a damn thing you can do about it. Wright's face went red. You can't. I can, and I will, but I'm also filing a claim with the territorial marshal about the fire, about the lawsuit, about everything you've done. Nathaniel leaned close. One more move against me or my family, and I'll make sure you hang for arson. Wyoming doesn't take kindly to people who burn ranches. Men have stretched rope for less. Wright's mouth opened, closed. He had no response. Nathaniel left him there, returned to the ranch victorious. But Eleanor saw the toll it took, saw the lines deepening around his eyes, saw him wince when he walked, the old war wound bothering him more. That night she found him on the porch, same spot, same chair, same stars. It's really over this time, he said. Wright won't bother us again. Too much risk. Good. Eleanor sat on the step. Nathaniel, I need to tell you something. What? I love you. The words hung in the night air. Simple. True. Terrifying. Nathaniel went very still. Eleanor, let me finish. She turned to look at him. I didn't want to love you, didn't plan on it. You bought me at an auction. Worst possible beginning. But these past months, watching you with my children, watching you fight for us, stand up for us, include Anna, when you had every right to turn her away. She paused. You're the best man I've ever known, and I love you. Nathaniel stood, pulled her up, held her face in his calloused hands. I've been in love with you since the day you threatened Mordecai with fire. Maybe before. Maybe from the moment you lifted your chin on that auction platform and refused to bow. He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. Eleanor kissed him back, tasting smoke and hope and the future they'd choose together. When they pulled apart, Nathaniel rested his forehead against hers. Marry me, properly, not because I bought you, because you choose me. Yes, Eleanor said. God, yes. They married 3 weeks later, under the oak tree on the hill, where Catherine and Daniel were buried. Nathaniel said they'd want to be there, want to see him happy again. The whole ranch came. Ezra stood as best man. Ruth cried. Anna smiled through tears. Thomas gave Eleanor away, standing tall and proud. Margaret read from her journal, a piece she'd written about family and choice and love that lasted. Benjamin held the rings. Maggie scattered flower petals. Clara clapped and laughed, not understanding but feeling the joy. Even Constance came, standing at the back, crying silently. Eleanor caught her eye, nodded. Forgiveness wasn't easy, but it was possible. Sometimes. The ceremony was simple. Traditional vows spoken with trembling voices. Nathaniel promised to love and cherish. Eleanor promised to honor and keep. Both promised to choose each other every day for as long as they lived. When the preacher said, "You may kiss your bride," Nathaniel cupped Eleanor's face gently, kissed her like she was precious. The gathering cheered. Clara clapped. Even Ezra smiled. They were married. Eleanor Hayes was now Eleanor Cross. The name felt right, felt earned. That night in their bedroom, the one they had expanded to make space for two, Nathaniel held her close. Thank you, he whispered, for choosing me, for staying, for loving me when I didn't think I deserved to be loved. You do deserve it, Eleanor said. You've always deserved it. They made love slowly, carefully, learning each other. It wasn't like Eleanor's first wedding night with Harrison, rushed and awkward and nervous. This was different, better. The joining of two people who'd survived loss and found each other on the other side. Afterward, they lay tangled together, content. Tell me about the silver, Eleanor said. What are you going to do with it? Mine it, carefully. Take out enough to secure the ranch, put money aside for the children's education, maybe build a proper school in Laramie. He paused. The land's worth more with the silver, but it's not about the money. It's about building something that lasts. A legacy, Eleanor said. Our legacy, not just mine, ours. The years that followed were good. Hard, but good. They mined the silver enough to make them comfortable but not rich, used the money wisely. Sent Benjamin to veterinary school in Denver. He came back at 22, the only trained veterinarian within 100 miles. Set up practice in Laramie, served the whole territory. Margaret opened a bookstore, partnered with Constance. The two women became unlikely friends, bonded by a shared love of books and business. Margaret married a traveling teacher, had two daughters who loved reading as much as she did. Thomas took over more of the ranch operations, became a respected rancher in his own right, married a neighboring rancher's daughter, had three children. Built his house on the south corner of the property, close enough to help but far enough to have his own life. Maggie became a teacher, just like in Nathaniel's vision. Taught children in Laramie, including her own nieces and nephews. Married a blacksmith, had four children who all inherited her beautiful voice. Clara grew up fearless and fierce, helped Nathaniel run the ranch until she was old enough to take over completely. Declared herself the first female ranch owner in Wyoming. Never married. Said she was too busy with cattle to bother with men. Michael, Anna's son, became Nathaniel's apprentice, learned everything about ranching and business. Eventually bought land of his own, stayed close to Stone Creek. Married, had children, named his first son Nathaniel. Anna remarried, a widower with kind eyes and a gentle manner. They built a house on the edge of Stone Creek property, stayed part of the extended family. Had two more children together. Anna finally found the peace she'd been searching for. The years passed, children grew, grandchildren came. The ranch expanded. The family tree spread like roots, deep and strong. Nathaniel's hair went fully gray. His limp worsened, but his eyes stayed sharp. His love stayed steady. He worked the ranch until he was 70, then finally let Thomas and Clara take over completely. Eleanor's hands grew weathered from medicine and work, her face lined with age. But her back stayed straight, her spirit unbroken. She ran the medical office until she was 65, training younger women to carry on the work. On their 20th anniversary, they climbed the hill behind the barn. The oak tree was bigger now, roots deep and strong. The graves were well tended, flowers growing around them. I talk to them sometimes, Nathaniel admitted. Catherine and Daniel. Tell them about you, about the children, about the life we've built. What do you think they'd say? Eleanor asked. I think Catherine would like you. Would be grateful someone loved me when she couldn't anymore. Nathaniel's voice was soft. And Daniel. I think he'd be proud of his brothers and sisters, even if they're not his by blood. Eleanor leaned against him. I talk to Harrison sometimes too. Tell him the children are safe, that we made it. We did make it, didn't we? Nathaniel looked at the ranch spread below them. The expanded house, the barns, the fences, the fields, the tiny figures of their grandchildren playing in the yard. We built something that'll last. Something worth remembering, Eleanor agreed. They stood together as the sun set, painting the sky gold and pink and purple. Two people who'd been broken, who'd found each other at the worst moment, who'd chosen each other every day since. Eleanor thought about that day at the auction, standing on the platform, terrified and humiliated, thinking her life was over. She'd been wrong. Her life hadn't ended that day. It had begun, and what a life it had been, full of struggle and triumph, heartbreak and joy, failure and success, full of love, the real kind, the hard kind, the kind that showed up every single day. Eleanor took Nathaniel's hand. He squeezed back. She knew, bone deep and certain, that if she had to do it all again, the auction, the fear, the fighting, all of it, she would, because it had led her here, to this man, to this family, to this life, and that was worth everything. Epilogue. Stone Creek Ranch, 1905. Nathaniel Cross, now 63 years old, finished his story. His grandson, Daniel Jr., 16 and wide-eyed, stared at him. Grandpa, the boy said, you bought Grandma at an auction? I did. Nathaniel's voice was steady. No shame, just fact. $100, best investment I ever made. Did you love her right away? No, love came later, slowly, built day by day, choice by choice. Nathaniel looked at Eleanor's grave, fresh dirt still dark against the grass. She died 6 months ago, peacefully in her sleep at 70. 70 years of a hard life lived well. But I respected her from the start, admired her strength. That grew into love. Do you miss her? Every day. Nathaniel's voice broke. Every single day. But I'm grateful for every moment we had, for the family we built, for the life we chose together. What happened to everyone else? Daniel Jr. asked. Mordecai? Samuel Wright. Mordecai died 5 years after we married, drinking himself to death mostly. Constance outlived him by 30 years, ran that store until she was 80. Samuel Wright left Wyoming, went back east. Heard he died in Philadelphia of all places. And the silver? We mined it for 15 years, made enough to secure the ranch, send your parents and aunts and uncles to school, build the library in Laramie, but we never let it become about the money. It was always about the family, about building something that lasts. Nathaniel stood slowly, his old bones protesting. Come on, boy, let's head back. Your mother will have supper ready. They walked down the hill together, the old man and the young one. 4 generations now lived on Stone Creek land. The ranch had grown to 500 acres. The original cabin was still there, preserved as the heart of the compound. Children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren filled it with noise and life. As they reached the yard, Nathaniel paused, looked back at the hill, at the oak tree, at the graves of the people he'd loved and lost. Grandpa, Daniel Jr. asked, you okay? Yeah, boy, I'm okay. Nathaniel smiled, real and warm. I was just thinking, your grandmother taught me something important. It's not about how you start. It's about what you choose to do with the hand you're dealt. What do you mean? I bought her for $100, worst possible beginning. But she gave me a life worth living. Gave me purpose when I'd lost mine. Gave me a family when I thought I'd never have one again. He looked at his grandson. Some men measure their lives in money, in land, in power. I measure mine in the family I built, in the children who carry my name, in the woman who chose me every single day until the day she died. That's beautiful, Grandpa. It's true, and that matters more than beautiful. Nathaniel put his hand on the boy's shoulder. Remember that. Truth matters more than beauty. Choice matters more than circumstance. And family, real family, the kind you choose and build and fight for, that matters most of all. They walked into the house together, into the warmth and noise and chaos of family. Nathaniel settled into his chair, surrounded by children and grandchildren, by the legacy he and Eleanor had built. Outside, the sun set over Wyoming. The mountains turned purple. The stars came out, cold and bright. And on the hill behind the barn, under the oak tree, 3 graves rested in peace. Catherine Cross, Daniel Cross, Eleanor Cross. Together at last, all the broken pieces, all the lost souls, all the people who'd loved and been loved by one scarred cowboy who bought a widow at an auction and changed all their lives forever. The end. Author's note. This story is about choice, about how we're defined not by what happens to us, but by what we choose to do about it. Eleanor could have let the auction break her. Nathaniel could have let grief destroy him. Instead, they chose each other, chose to build, chose to love. That's the legacy that mattered. Not the silver, not the land, the choice to keep choosing every single day to be family. That's what makes us human. That's what makes us whole.